guys, today I'm building the ME262 from HobbyBoss in 1/48 scale. I personally dislike the look of the U5 nose, so instead I'll be using the part for the production version of the 262, which is still included in the kit. The kit contains decals, clear parts, multiple sprues with nice surface detail, and some extra parts like these air-to-air missiles. I started working on the cockpit and glued a few parts on wooden sticks for ease of handling. Next, I added a coat of primer, followed by RLM66, which is a dark gray. I repeated this step for the insides of the fuselage, and added some highlights and shadows with a brush to break up the surface. The decal for the instrument panel didn't look right, so I removed it and painted the details with a very small brush. Next, I added some missing seatbelts that I made from painter's tape, and all the cockpit parts were glued together. For the underside of the nose, you can choose between a plastic or a metal part. The metal part can be used to add weight to the front, to keep the nose shield down. However, I prefer the plastic part as it makes it easier to glue the rest of the parts to. Next, the cockpit is glued into the fuselage. I use tape and a few clamps to hold the parts together. The fan blades and inside parts are painted before the assembly of the turbines. Because I didn't use the metal part in the nose, I left the gun base open so lead can be added. A piece of lead was cut into 3 small pieces, which were then mounted in the tip of the nose to correct the center of gravity. Some metal wire was used to simulate the cables connected to the flight instruments, and those were then painted yellow with a brush. A small hole was drilled in the canopy for the radio antenna wire, and then all the clear parts were masked off with Tamiya masking tape. The canopy was then glued in position with microcrystal clear. I sanded the bottom of the wheels flat to simulate weight and prepared all loose parts for the airbrush. I've cut 2 circles from Tamiya masking tape to mask the turbine intakes. The canopy was first sprayed with RLM66 so that all the inside surfaces have the same dark grey color. Then the whole model was covered with Vallejo black surface primer. Next, you can add some pre-shading if you like. I used grey primer to try out some sort of modeling effect. Then I masked off the underside with Tamiya tape and used Vallejo metal color for the aluminium panels inside. A kitchen sponge was cut into pieces to mask the wheelbase, and then the model is ready for camouflage. The light blue underside of the plane was sprayed with RLM76. For that I used a Vallejo color. For the green camo I used RLM82. I started with Vallejo, but used a color from ammo to lighten the tone. For the brown violet RLM81, I started with a Vallejo color, but it was too light for my taste, so I didn't use it. And the ammo color I had turned out to be too violet, so I mixed it with a chocolate brown to tone it down. In the end I got this result. The modeling on the fuselage was done with the airbrush and refined a few times. I once made a few masks from Tamiya masking tape for a BF-109, and I was able to reuse the number 4 for this model. Next I masked off the tailband and added the white 4 and yellow tailband with the airbrush. Then the whole model received a gloss coat to prepare the surface for the application of decals. Microset and Sol were then used to conform the decals into the panel lines of the model, and a second gloss coat is then added to seal the decals in. Next I added a dark panel wash to make the panel lines more notable, and the gloss coat was toned down with a matte varnish. The missing parts were also painted and then attached to the model. A brake line was made from electric wire and added to each wheel. The masking tape was removed from the canopy and some small chipping was added with aluminum paint. And the antenna wire was made from a fine sewing thread and fixed in position with superglue. So the ME262 from Hobby Boss has some nice details and is easy to build. I hope you liked the video, many thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.